Be sure to subscribe and like our channel. Welcome. This is Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole, which we have an echo, unfortunately. Sorry about that. I'll try to speak less big, Andrieh. And still hear an echo. This is Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole and the Queen City Curio videocast. I'm not sure what Zach did with his mic to make an echo.
I've not done anything. Let's see.
Yeah, you know you have. Usually we don't have this problem.
Oh,
just turn the mic away.
How's that now?
Much better.
All
nope.
Right.
I can still hear an echo. So we still have an echo going live. This is live radio, so it happens. I don't know. Maybe we should start doing the show together again, but, in the same room. You were a little too close for my comfort, so that's how it is. Today,
it was very tight.
Today, we're going to talk about the Exalted Dead, and we have on the show today Kaliva Keres, who is going to be the future author of a book on Exalted Dead in the Middle Ages of the royal families and royalty families or other witch families that she can track down. And she's going to be working on that book. And parts of that book are, in fact, going to be included in my Fire Magic book, or one set of tools is going to be included. Of channeled Exalted Dead techniques, going to be included in there. Her personal practice involves a lot of recovering the past and working with the Exalted Dead to redevelop or change techniques that our ancestors or her ancestors had, and to basically bring them up to modern age to be reusable for people now, or to actually just discover techniques through research and channeling that from the Exalted Dead that allow other magical operations that we might not think of right now. So without further ado, I welcome you to the show.
Ta-da!
It's all you.
Sorry.
Oh, now she got muted.
Oh, I had no, thank you for having me on, I think. Not sure how this is going to go, but hello, and hello from the other side.
Exactly. It's going to go quite well. So today's show is all about Exalted Dead, which all three of us have sort of an extensive collection of experience of working with. And we should probably start the show by saying what exactly are the Exalted Dead from our perspective versus the regular dead.
Okay, well, I go ahead and start that one. Or do you want me to do
I
this?
can go ahead and start. You are the guest. You could start.
You are the guest. You can start.
I could start. For me, the Exalted Dead are not just those that have passed over, that, those that have passed over and are powerful enough to communicate back to you, because not all can. And sometimes it takes quite a while before, someone who has passed to be able to be strong enough energetically to communicate. Hence why with people who you hear on these ghost hunter shows or ghost hunting, there's cold spots or batteries draining. They need that extra energy to be able to project anything. Also,
surprisingly how close our answers will actually probably be. I think when I was thinking about it, my answer was something along the lines of they could keep personality coherence after death.
Exactly. And not only that, they at times have, for the Exalted Dead, it's not just having the power or enough oomph to communicate, but also to still work. They can work from the other side. They can affect things from the other side. And not
and I think one of the key things that you raised is that they have enough coherence or power, however you want to define it, to not be communicated with. That doesn't make one an exalted dead, because that is more the power of the shaman or voodoo priest or witch or magician collecting them and kind of communicating. They have enough power to reach out unprovoked, as in like they have enough power to reach out by themselves and talk with people, not people who are initiating communication. As in,
Exactly.
they have collected enough ability, power, and knowledge in life to reach out past the death boundary without an initial communication.
Exactly. And along those lines, I can point out my great-grandfather would definitely be one. He came back. He passed when I was 16, and he was almost 100 years old. But I want to say it was close to a decade after that, maybe a little more than that, that I woke up to him sitting bedside. And it wasn't just lucid dreaming or anything like that. He was as solid as any other person, as he was when he was alive, which is kind of odd when you wake up and there's anybody all of a sudden there, but to have him, and it was more or less to give me a warning that if I didn't start getting control of my anger issues and let go of some of the things I was holding in, that I was going to basically I was going to die of an aneurysm. That I was just going to literally blow a gasket.
Hardcore.
Hardcore. Now, Zach, you might even define the exalted dad in classic Taoist terms, right?
Absolutely. I mean, working with the personality coherence, it's like they would define these by what? Some sort of immortal status. And then you have different degrees of immortal status. Like, well, can they cause a physical change? Can they cause... and then it's just degrees of physical change. What you would say, like, okay, are they a spiritual immortal? Spiritual immortals can actually more or less change the environment around them. An earth immortal would be just like a physical presence. So they can start tearing it up, and that's how they would do it in Chinese culture.
Cool.
And that gets into things especially in Chinese culture, they'll go into folk heroes too, where people will trace their lineage and say, like, all right, there's this folk hero in the family. So that gets into a lot more complicated types of workings.
Which we'll talk about today. But I mean, that's very interesting. So like, essentially, these kinds of spirits that, now obviously a saint is we'll talk about saints too, but the saints are actually Catholic saints, are what they are. But in folk pagan magic, right, saints might not have been that. They might have just been the people who are able to speak coherently past the death veil. Or, as Zach has said, maybe minor immortals. There's a lot more immortals than what's in the book, in the normal books. Like, go ahead.
There are plenty of what is termed pre-canon saints. In other words, people who are considered saint, they might be local, or for whatever reason considered holy, even in pagan terms, kind of holy. Sometimes it's those that might have stood their grounds and become what we would term martyrs today, but stood up to oppressors for whatever reason, or stuck to their own principles, and because that died in some harsh way, some usually beheading, what have you. But the tale keeps getting said, but at the same time, it's not just here's the legend of so and so. It's after they pass, something that was theirs, whether it be their well or a spring or something that they used to go to, all of a sudden now there's quote unquote miracles happening, or people are getting healed by those springs. And granted, they may have been healing springs already and no one realized it, who knows, but in association after the fact, now it's like, oh, okay, so therefore saints.
But still, interesting enough is those spirits can reach out enough
Mm-hmm.
to deal with the energies of the springs, and that's kind of an important point.
Exactly.
I think we are starting to get to. It's not like these spirits just have endless power to influence the physical world. They have. That's why I said coherence. They have coherence and the knowledge to know how to get energy to influence the physical world. So maybe in the spiritual world, whatever belief you believe, whether it's under the waters like in voodoo or other places, they can take themselves out of that place. They still have to get energy here. And there is a lot of different ways for the knowledgeable magicians, shamans, witches to get energy. The process, even without a body, once you get a little further past the basics of Qigong and using your own life force for magic, there's many processes for more advanced practitioners to actually figure out how to get energy. And that's part of the issue. They also have that skill set that they can either use the spring and block off any opposing nature spirits or other spirits. So it's just they're the only ones that can use the energy of that spring because they're defending it, or other from the spiritual side of things, and then use that energy to manipulate things, or they're using the worship of followers as energy to actually create miracles. The unpracticed cannot just make miracles from energy of adoration, right? There's lots of famous people in our world right now that cannot work miracles because they're famous.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But in a weird sort of way, they are famous. So that adulation, that adoration that they're getting right now, those that are adept or that are in touch enough, I'm not going to say in tune, but in touch enough, even on a subconscious level, may be able to harness that energy and after death be able to do something. It's possible.
Maybe.
I'm not saying that's it, but
but it's more likely somebody who worked magic in life would be able to harness it, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean, I think even goes to a point of if we're talking about Exalted Dead, and we're talking about, well, we'll talk about the general dead afterward and what ancestor work is. However, if you understand this notion in a present like life standard, you can set up structures possibly later on. So, for example, in Chinese culture, the days of the week, the 10 days, are actually off of a royal family that were all priests. So they got the whole culture to worship them, and it went further than that.
Makes me think of the Egyptians, back in the Pharaoh kings or the exalted royal family, so to speak, or it's like you're living gods.
That's certainly the attempt, is to create Exalted Dead out of the ruling class, although we can make arguments whether or not that worked really or not. Or is it more of like the ability of the people passing over, or some combination thereof that determines whether or not they can kind of get to that status after death? There's lots of pharaohs, but maybe they don't all have the ability to talk after death and reach out, or the desire. Maybe they all have the ability, but they don't care enough to do so. In which case, still, it doesn't
make a difference.
In practical magic circles, right? It doesn't matter. But maybe other ruling houses, again, they might have the standing but not the ability. So once you're famous, obviously people are initiating contact. It's somebody summoning you. So it's much harder to say that's the Exalted Dead, or it's unclear completely. To me, at least, because what is their spiritual makeup, or is the summoning itself giving them enough coherence to communicate?
And see, for me, this is where I add on a little other condition to be considered an Exalted Dead versus someone who can actually just come back and communicate. And with that is those that, well, not just affecting things around you, but had some sort of ability, whether it was known or not known in life, and they have it in death and can pass that on.
Yeah.
And that
I
brings up
definitely
an
think that's
interesting
true.
point.
Because
Go ahead, Andrieh.
otherwise, I'm sorry, Marilyn Monroe and Humphrey Bogart and all those that are still haunting Hollywood would be able to, there's the celebrated dead and then there's the exalted dead, if that makes sense.
I think that's a good distinction. Like, there's a dead that people celebrate, and that's sort of like Marilyn Monroe. And then there's the dead who have real spiritual power. And we're talking about the dead that have some spiritual that can actually quite possibly either initiate or force their descendants into being magicians. In a lot of our cases, this is exactly how our magical process started, is that ancestors forced the issue because they see you have some ability and they decided you're damn well going to develop it and they're not going to leave you alone. Sound familiar to any of you two?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, the great-grandfather I was speaking about before in my nonna, they were the ones who taught me from a very early age. They were getting me into more of the herbal magics and things that I needed to know in simple ways. And by that, I mean, it wasn't, like, this is magic, this is that, whatever. It was more or less, whether it be in the home, in the garden, or just out in nature, making sure I knew what was what and what was used for what. As I think we all know, there are many herbs that aren't just used for cooking. It's also magic in a lot of our practices, and in some cases, skincare. So, I mean, it transcends in multiple uses, basically. But which kind of makes it easier when you want to practice under the radar. But at the same time, it's just it's nice to know here's medicine in a natural world if you can't afford to get it. It's like, okay, this plant is for this. And so I can make a tea out of this or a poultice or something. And that'll help get me through until I can actually either afford some medicine or go to a doctor or what have you.
One of the reasons that I wanted to kind of bring you on as an up-and-coming author is the fact that, like, you have that kind of approach where there's lots of people who talk about channeling. There's not a lot of people who talk about, yeah, I channeled this and actually used this for skincare from my channeling session with my Exalted Dead, and it actually fixed my skin issue. Like, that's a different level of channeling and a different level of what we're speaking about than I think what passes mustard a lot of the times when we're kind of discussing Exalted Dead and stuff like that. I'm absolutely sure with Zach, when Zach first met me, his ancestors sort of told him to be in the place, even though he'd be like, I'd rather go someplace else.
It was subtle. I mean, it was more like I wasn't having communications, but this is the thing. And we talked about like traditions within the family. My particular family, there's this one festival that you do in Chinese, just so like you give food to the dead. My family is the one that consistently did that in the greater family. So it's just that alone probably gave me access where my ancestors could subtly influence things, even though I didn't know at the time.
What I find interesting, it was actually my mother who taught me how to interact with the dead, even though she's not a practitioner herself. But I would say a lot of the Southerners, They had some, well, then again, a lot of the South were Irish and Scottish, so you had your Celts anyway. But aside from that, my mother is also Central European. In other words, Czech, Romanian. Got the we still use the term gypsy. It never fight, but I know that's a controversial term, so that's fine. But just it was always a known thing. It was almost like a given thing in a weird sort of way, almost like a Victorian attitude to the dead. You go, you pay your respects, you remember these people were good to you alive, and you go, and because of them, you are here. So you make sure that their graves are attended to, and you go and have a conversation if you have to. If you have no one else that you can vent to, the dead will listen most of the time. They can either tune out, or they may kind of bitch slap you, so to speak, if they're done, or stop your whining and this is what we can do. But just go and have that conversation is the first part in dealing with any. And you know, a lot of people don't realize how not just how easy, but they may actually be able to connect with their dead. Sometimes you just feel a touch. You may still feel a presence. Just start talking and know that they're there. They're listening. They're watching over you. They're invested in you. That's the thing.
Which I think this brings up a whole bunch of points that we actually had the precursor of the show about, which was first like, well, how might you discover exalted dead in your family? And I think you said some of them. It's like, it's that family member who's telling you the little things when they're alive that it's never classified modernly as magic, but they're real anal about how you have to go to the graves and talk about and make contact and what you have to exactly do. And all of those things that to us we know as ritual magic. And they're very precise about those things. The oddities of the stories, too, of, well, Grandma used to go to the window every Saturday morning and sprinkle water on the window before starting the day. Every Saturday morning. It's those oddities that are in the folklore of the stories that tell you, and some of which you are getting into, but it's the personal folklore that sort of gets into that they were probably practicing witches. And if they are probably practicing witches, it's not a sure thing that they're the exalted dead per se, but it is likely that they can put you in contact with the members of your family who are. And if you if you have ancestors who have done witchcraft of any sort, it is likely that some of them got to the stage they could have coherence after death.
And in some cases, they've been...
Andrieh Vitimus at gmail.com if people really disagree with that, but I think it's true.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. There are some that I knew in life, so it's easy to talk to. I know their voice, I know it's them. And because I think we'd all agree, in general, spirits, especially those that you don't know, I mean, there's a lot of spirits around, they like to play tricks, especially for they'll lie. If you don't know them, they'll lie. You can put up certain barriers, or you want to talk to me, you have to go through this ancestor I knew and trusted in life. No, if they're not letting you through, sorry. You can have your ancestors work for you.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing. It's like, so we're talking about practical exalted dead stuff. And, right, some of the things too is like, yeah, someone else. If they don't have a reason, Exalted Dead, to work with you, I mean, you could call Merlin all you want, and Merlin probably will be like, "Who? You're who? You want what? What are you going to do for me?" And you brought nothing to the table, and they're like, "Get out of here!" Right? Like, I'm not speaking to you. You don't have enough standing to speak to me. You're not part of my family. You're not connected to things. You're not working. You're not even working with the Arthurian legends. Why should I care? Right? Like, that's the kind of thing. Like, like, get out. And that's the thing about famous dead magicians and famous dead Exalted Dead who you may be trying to contact because of their fame, but that's not necessarily the right people to contact. Like what you're describing when you're talking about working through your ancestors and kind of the hints that I was giving of listen to the stories. It's clear we're talking about, well, we're still saying go to your ancestors to sort of get the more powerful dead that can come forward, not go to strangers. Now, that's said, you never, right. Like, now, in your case, you're writing a book on, obviously it's a period-specific grouping of Italian families that you are related to, so they probably will talk to you,
Sometimes you have to, I hate to say this, because it's so precious, because no one else has it really, and that's your own blood. But sometimes in dealing with, especially those that far back, you can say, I'm related this way, that way, and the other. I'm directly descended from you. You need to deal with me. And they're like, I don't know you from Adam. I don't even know who your parent, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, here's my proof. We're of the same blood. It's like, I'm just giving you a little.
Yeah.
This is, and for proof only. No other reason.
Officially speaking, usually you would not, in most necromantic practices that I would consider safe, give the blood of your own blood to the dead, but to prove authenticity that it is in fact there.
That we are family.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, in the case also, it isn't also the case that just because they're family and they're Exalted Dead, they'll give you the time of day.
Exactly.
For instance, I know for a fact, Zach has certain members of his family. And, I mean, if people don't know, Louis is literally the royal family of China. It can be traced back. Not that he's one of them, right? There's many, depending on which revolution you're at which time, right? But his name literally traces back. That doesn't mean he's royalty of China, but it does make a strong case that he could try. And some of those beings might tell him, you're not at the ability level right now to understand what I would teach, so it's not worth my time to talk to you at this time. Notice, they didn't say it's not worth my time to talk to you, or they're invalidating the claim that maybe you are linked as a descendant 30 generations from there, but it's not worth their time now.
Right, because it comes down to, are you even matching them where you can interpret what they're saying? And this gets into pieces like, do you even have the cues? Because if you don't even have the cues to understand what they're saying, it might as well not be anything at that point.
Right, if you don't have context, how are you gonna process it through your subconscious mind? You're not.
Actually, if Zach, if you're not opposed to me using one of our instances, family instances, if you know what I mean, as an example.
Whatever, you do you. We're on the air. It's all good.
Live radio here at Queen City Curio. Here comes the secret. Boom, go.
No, in what I'm getting to is there was an instance that Zach was with me, along with, we have this weird connection with our family. Our ancestors kind of know our other ancestors. It's very strange. It's nice, but strange. but he was with me with when I was contacting one of my oldest, and I do mean old, ancestors, to the point that my nickname for him is Captain Caveman. I can say that. He doesn't have a problem with me saying that. Others is going to be a different story. But he was testing us. Okay, it's like, really, are you at this level? Are you going to pick up what I did? He was willing to poison just to see.
That ancestor, I mean in all love, that was a hard-hitting asshole ancestor, and wasn't playing around, because we saw physical changes in our lives to prove the point.
Exactly. But at the same time, it was like, okay, I'm gonna have you're my ancestor, or you're my descendant. I get that, and this one is descended from my buddy here. So okay, fine, but are you even worthy of our time? Because we've been at this for millennia, and really, are you worth me even wasting any more time? And they both were not fun until we passed their tests. Then they're like, oh, okay, we're going to have some fun here. But until that point,
it was a series of trials.
Say that having, like I said, like been part of some of these workings and really kind of seeing how this book is being kind of worked on in actual hands-on ways, and even being tested by some of Kaliva's ancestors, where they're like, can you handle the fire? Well, of course, I'm writing a fire book, so that's not really a test for me. It's like, but they still, I could see if it was somebody else, they would have gotten hurt spiritually and possibly sick. They were not playing around, even when they were trying to see whether or not this is a person that their descendant could work with in an intelligent manner. They're not fucking around. They're like, oh, you claim to be a magician? Let's find out. Let's find out, shall we? Let's see if you're worth it to even bother with. Let's find out and that's not even them. It's working with somebody who is a descendant being pulled into a space to communicate. They didn't have any issue with, Kaliva. They had issue with the other people saying, are you even worth our fuck? Are these people worth our time? Because I'm here. Mm-hmm. I'm here right now. Sure, let's see if they're worth even worth working with our descendant at all. So like, yeah.
Exactly. And if you think about it, magic, or those that practice any sort of magic or were exalted for such knowledge, whether it be a shaman, a witch doctor, however you want to talk about it, back in those days, so far back, were much more powerful than anyone today, because they're much more connected to the earth, to nature, to the spirits than we are today.
And they had many more stories told about them, and it was much more of a part of respected culture. So it's not like now where everything's commoditized. They, generally speaking, were considered exalted when they were here.
Quests. Probably the closest things I can think of today would be Native Americans, as far maybe even some of the other tribal cultures, where in order to be considered a man, you have to go through certain tests and certain quests and whatnot and pass those tests. Otherwise, who knows? You could be banished. It could be whatever.
This is the funny thing about that,
a warrior or whatever.
Right. The funny thing is about that even is in Eastern Europe, like where my family, and really closer to Eastern Central Europe. There's all kinds of stories of people getting tested all the time. If we go to Chinese culture, like shamans, there's all kinds of stories of shamans getting literally tested before they get any knowledge. And in many of the Western European countries, maybe pre-Christian, notions. There's stories
Mhm.
of before you would get taught the family magic, you had to earn the family magic. So this kind of process is in all of the stories. It's just, I think when people, because our families are so disconnected, they don't realize that the Exalted Dead who might have went through those things may in fact expect you to go through such things.
Right.
Yeah,
In
and
a
it
different
may
way,
be
or
to in a different way, and it's
Mhm.
like they may not agree with your views whatsoever. It's like a radically
that is
different
correct.
perspective.
That is correct. I
Exactly.
think, and we should talk about that because we have a certain modern sensibility.
Mhm.
However, to go back to the Italian and the period of Exalted Dad that we were focusing on initially to have this book, a lot of them had poisoner skills and they had no shame whatsoever or feel bad about killing whoever because that's what you
They even
did
killed
if people
family
got in your
members.
way.
Yep,
Right,
even if
because if they
those
got
were
in your
family.
way, right, because if they got in your way, they shouldn't have gotten in your way.
Should have known better.
Hardcore.
Mhm.
Right. But I mean that doesn't sound like a modern. Nowadays
No,
we
it
don't have that
does
modern
not.
sensibility, right? We're like we have much more.
Mm,
Well, maybe some of us don't have that mentality, but you know.
no.
But back
Yeah.
in those times, that was common, and
Yep.
not only did they have those skills, it was a dirty secret that they had those skills. Like, go ahead, piss me off. Like it was kind of that kind of dirty
You have
secret.
me thinking of Katerina specifically. My yeah, she goes way back. Cousin of sorts. Without such, you wouldn't have the Medici family. Well, you would, but not those that you know of today. She was kind of the matriarch starter of that. The Grand Dukes. Before that, there still was the Medici family, and excuse me, she's yelling at me already. Medici. She's very specific on how the last name is pronounced. This is what you get with things you wouldn't know otherwise. But no, she was very aware of magic, and yeah, she dabbled, so to speak, on what we consider magic nowadays. A lot of the stuff she was doing was more poison, and then she had, of course, her beauty recipes, et cetera, et cetera. There's more to her than meets the eye, though, too. She's one that a lot of people are still familiar with in certain things because of games like Assassin's Creed, etc. But statescraft, that's what she keeps wanting to teach me, is statescraft, which I'm like, that's great if I were to lead, but I'm not leading yet. And she doesn't care.
However,
Yeah.
as a future upcoming author, let me assure you that politics is a big name of the game.
Yes.
More than you
politics
would
was-
possibly imagine as an author, and politics between authors is much more important than you think. And I'm bad at it. So
hers is more not necessarily the suave necessary politics. Hers is more, I'm going to hold you hostage until you favor what I need right now. I mean, she held the whole entire Vatican.
effective strategy of results orientation, without ethics or different ethics that it proves the point. Just because you're in the modern age does not mean that they will have the same ethical code you do.
There's some bleed over here, and we still deal with some of the same issues that they dealt with back then. Yeah, I'm not even going to bring that up right now, because that's a whole different story and a whole different tirade for another day. But
See, live air channeling. People don't understand. They're trying to. I could see it behind her. Like
yeah, I
can
can see it.
it's kind of like, well, I'm not going to say that, but on air you can't actually see that, so I have to describe the fact that that's going on because she mentioned the name out loud, and not you
it's
don't have to do
there.
with an exalted dead. Remember, we said you have enough coherence that you don't necessarily have to have a ritual. They can come on their own accord and get energy on their own accord. And here's like an example when they're trying to get inside your head and talk into you, basically like, right. So
Say this now.
I'm getting a headache. Stop. I won't say it. No. Or something. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing about the Exalted Dead. Like, this isn't just a servitor that you call up and you're done. This is a being that has their own coherence, and in some cases shows. We can argue about that, but in some cases seems to show some independence, and can come at unfortunate or at times you don't expect just when their name's mentioned.
Right.
You know, like this one. Like, so this is an example, like where that's just happening. We mentioned the name, and there we go. And I was describing details, not thinking about that person in particular, but they themselves consider themselves that much of a poisoner that they showed up. That's just how it is.
No
right.
qualms.
And this gets back to the pieces.
I won't even start to talk about the vampire legends that my family's associated with from southern Ukraine. But we'll just leave that alone, right?
And it keeps going, everybody. Live show.
Oh, yeah. No. Hold on one second.
Actually, there was a question in the chat of how much their own times they remember, and I think it depends on which dead you're speaking of. A lot of these dead, the Exalted Dead, seem to remember a fair bit amount of the important details. And in some cases, you can track back those details if you can do genealogy, or the records weren't destroyed by other world forces.
Right.
So my family has some difficulty because many, like as in going right now, as previous in World War II, many of the records were destroyed by Mother Russia again for a second time. Now they're being destroyed again. But
you'd have the same problem in Ireland because of the troubles. There's bombings and whatnot, and happen to be the governmental buildings which held all the information. Churches, people,
right.
If you know a church.
But some of them can give you details that you can map out that you otherwise wouldn't know, like a specific church that they know is still standing. That dates to their time period. So they sometimes, depending on which dead it is, understand a lot about what their time period is. In some cases, they understand less about our world now than they understand about the time they came from. So they they might not have perfect recollection of the small stuff, but they certainly remember a lot of the big stuff, it seems like. And like I said, because they're coherent enough past death to communicate, they don't necessarily understand this world now. So it isn't quite like... Go ahead.
I was just going to point out, it depends on, and I hate to say this, the class of the Exalted Dead sometimes too, to answer that question. Because I have some of mine that were more of the nobility and the aristocracy, that because they ran the households, so they're very aware, especially the females, they're very aware of what was going on day to day within the whole entire house. Because that was their realm where they pretty much had the power. They had the pants in the family when it came to the household. And so therefore every little detail, even down to minutia, that so they may remember more of the day-to-day or the small little tidbits that others wouldn't. That's all I was just going to point out.
Well,
right.
And
so,
I even go further on this, where like when Andrieh was first teaching me Ancestor work on this piece, it was very much like a culture shock. A lot of my ancestors, being from Asia, they're like, what are you talking about? They couldn't even understand it. And this wasn't like a one-time deal. It was a multiple set of stories around that.
and it's not a language barrier per se, because usually the language thing sorts itself out in the summoning process. It's a culture shock, like to the point that they would literally look at Zach and be like, "Okay, you're a spiritual teacher. You have an acupuncture center. What do you mean you have to advertise and do this? What? Literally culture shock of like, no,
Yeah.
no, no."
Right. Though at the same time, sometimes little bits of pop culture can help you. Captain Caveman, for instance, the reason why I am allowed to refer to him as Captain Caveman is from the old Captain Caveman cartoon. I projected that enough to him that this is my reference. I liked that cartoon. This is not a dig at you. It's not the fact that, yeah, you're in a cave, but yeah, you are a kind of hairy guy and you have a big enough nose. But it just cracked me. It was a sense of humor thing that he's like, all right, I get it. Okay, fine. And he kind of liked it. But that and the song Wooly Bully, that's a different style.
Right.
But
that's more like adding in kind of mimetics to try to help form the connection inside of your mind.
Right. It sometimes helps, especially when there's different cultures, different languages. Just saying, it's like, if you can project that, this is kind of where you're coming from, might help you get the names across.
Now, that said, you can certainly contact people who are not in your immediate family. I kind of want to answer Bear Amble's question on YouTube, but we can't speak to the True Grimoire because unless the author is on the show, we don't actually talk about their work third hand. But as far as our personal experience, you certainly can connect to an exalted dead who is not of your family connection only. However, you have to make it worth their while. That's what we were saying. Which is why I had to stand in like fire with somebody from Kaliva's family who was a fire magician or liked using fire, because essentially I had to prove the point that I was worth their time. Like I was worth their time in the summoning. Like why are you here, basically? Why is she there? Like, or, with Zach's ancestor, maybe they just, I don't know, send me on some astral thing where I have to get punched in the face by an immortal, and I'm like, oh, that hurt. Oh, you're still here? You're worth our time. I mean, it's just like that. Like, it has happened, but it's more but it is sort of like, why are you worth their time if you're not? Certainly it's easier with ancestral connections, but we're saying you certainly can call forth dead that are not your family, and many times that's a useful thing, but you have to have some reason to make it worth their time. Like, what are you doing to make it worth their time? What's the exchange when you go into it? Like, it can't just be what you want. And I think that's a mistake many people make about necromancy. It's like, well, I want this. I'm going to summon the dead and control it. But that usually goes as well as summoning demons and demanding that they do this by the hand of God or else. Like, right? It just doesn't. It blows up for everyone who tries it, and yet people still try that method of working with these extra entities. These people, if they are the exalted dead, are people who were magicians, and while they might not take the power from the summoning view, they certainly can get angry and find other power to make your life interesting. But once,
and if they want your attention and you're not giving it, they will make it. You may not even know. You may not hear them. You may be so wrapped up in your own head and what's going on with your own life that they will make it very, very clear that, hello, I'm here. Pay attention to me now.
Yes.
I
mean, the thing is even outside your family, I want to say that.
Oh, no, yours pretty much tried to mess with my finances. I was just like, hello? No.
Was that mine?
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it was like, okay, fine. I didn't want to deal with them. Not at that time. It was like, just hold on. I have other things to deal. They made it a point, and what's going to get my attention more than my finances? As soon as I stopped and was like, okay, we'll talk, then my finances they got good again.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. I still like them.
Exalted Dead.
I mean, in other cases, like I've had Exalted Dead directly. Again, like you could summon forward really any of the more powerful dead. It's just what's the do it like me and Zach sort of had an encounter with I'd consider it Exalted Dead, but they might consider themselves a fairy spirit depending on which myth, and that's Morgan Le Fay. We had direct interaction with it, with direct magical results, and they initiated the contact with us. Like, I'd consider that an Exalted Dead. We could debate that too, but that's still like, in the classic sense, they reported to be alive. I think they're Exalted Dead. They made contact with us, and they carried through on what they arranged. That's an instance where, yes, we had to go and meditate once the contact was made because the ritual helps you get the focus, but they were able to make contact directly. And that said, like Annie, so like particularly with Bear Ambles, like I said, like you can't directly speak to the True Grimoire because it's a different author, but from different necromantic styles, we could definitely say that you can work with people who are not family and who are known to be Exalted Dead. But the danger is there as you get further and further away or more famous, they have less reason to work with you. As in, like, what do they get out of it? Each case, like there usually has to be a reason.
And sometimes it's helpful to have had a family member that knows or knew them in life.
Yes.
Sometimes.
That's just so it's like that gives you a reason to communicate, or
it sort of know that you're legit.
Yeah, like it sort of provides the context of why is this person contacting me. Merlin's a great example. Merlin is pretty much reported to have lived a life. There's mythical stories around him. You can contact Merlin, and what happens? If you treat that as an Exalted Dead and you're a magician, why is Merlin going to care about most magicians? What context is there, right? What context is there? Like, there's other famous Chinese magicians. Why? There's one in particular that I've been wanting to contact with. He's from Japan, though. The one.
That one.
Do you remember? I have.
I can't remember his exact name. Playing,
but I had an experience where contact was made in a museum, and I have been putting it off, honestly, like, because I'm like, why? What is this spirit about? Like, why should I work with it? Like, right? And the only thing that I did was show up as a magician, and that entertained the spirit. That was enough. That was the reason. There was a reason that I was a magician, and I came to a museum that had artifacts from the 1000 AD, right? And that was enough. Old enough article with enough of a worship charge left that maybe everyone else who came the last few days was no, or they just weren't into magic. But the fact that I was, it was like a ping, like, oh, look, there's someone interesting. And that might be enough, right? That might be enough just to kind of get their attention. Just the fact that that you practice magic. So it's not like we're saying it's totally difficult. It just depends on the context and the situation and a whole bunch of variables and the intention of the spirit itself. And most classic summoning, textbook summoning necromantic rituals can work to get them there. But then again, still, what's the reason? And I think, and it has to be, most necromancy has to approach this from I think closer to a Voodonic style of what is the actual exchange that's going on. Are you going to give them food, or are you going to give them adoration, or are you going to give them something and then work towards sort of getting some real world results? What it essentially comes down to, what do they get out of it, since they can act on their own accord?
Right.
Well, it's very much like normal relationships in some ways. Remember, we're saying Exalted Dead mean they were humans at some point. So if you're going to talk to somebody, it's like, well, it's always good to give a meal. It's always good to say hi and give an introduction, right? It's like,
so yes, so
exchange.
I think you can. I think most of the time, if people have honesty in their heart, they could use like a classic textbook grimoire necromantic ritual, but it has to be true in the heart what the exchange principles are. And I think that's where a lot of magicians, even with skill, fail, because they don't come to the table with, I don't intend for this to be a one-sided necromantic summoning for either fun, which is for you, or you're intending to offer the spirit something, right. Like there's a commitment there on your part going into it, like of something that you're willing to negotiate for them.
Right. And sometimes if you're not sure, ask, what do they want? Yeah. What would they like? Yeah. I had a little dilemma where when I wanted to, it was getting close to her birthday, and I was just like, I want to put something out for my grandma just out in remembrance. I'm like, well, I know she was always drinking coffee when she was alive, but she also liked her whiskey. I don't know if she'd like whiskey or coffee more. And she actually answered, and I heard her loud as day. It was just like, I prefer coffee. I was like, oh, well, okay. There you go.
If someone wants to summon me after death, I prefer psychedelic mushrooms.
That's another thing. I mean, sometimes with the older Exalted Dead, don't be surprised if they ask for a little honey in the wine. That was typical of their day. And it also was, because it wasn't used as much, it was also considered wealth. So they would have that where others would not.
Well, I mean, particularly with that period of Italian, that's totally true.
Yeah.
In Greece, it might have been other things mixed with tincture,
right?
That they would like. Ukraine has different things, and each culture might have different things that they'll answer. Like if you can use a textbook ritual to get them there, then that's when the relationship starts. However, I would not expect it to follow textbook rules if you summon a magician. Like I would expect it. They may, in fact, test you, Even worse, they might say, go talk to this person who you have no idea who they are, but they're like, they wrote a book or something like that, right? Because why? They're telling you to go talk to their descendant, but they're not saying it directly, which has happened to Zach previously, and I've seen that kind of happen to Kaliva too, where they're like, go buy this book and talk to this person before you come to me. Because they're basically saying, well, you need to have a relationship with my descendant before you can have a relationship directly with me.
Exactly. And
it's just weird, because when it comes out that person exists, and I do have some materials online, that's when you get freaked out. Most people get a little freaked out about that.
Right.
And they have material about what the original Exalted Dead spirit was talking about, whether there's Taoism or Buddhism or Italian witchcraft or something like that, right?
A bit more on folk magic than witchcraft. Magic. Because I think we've talked about this before, or at least I've had conversations about this before. Stregonera is more Wiccan dipped in marinara sauce.
Just send an email to whatever your email address. Just go
Just
ahead.
whatever the
your
email
your
is.
email address. The hate mail goes to you on that one.
There's different connotations.
Hate mail goes to you.
Sturganera was more black magic. You had Benedicaria, which is more white Christian magic, and then you had those that were doing more of the folk magic that we're used to today. And with that, I would even wrap in the ceremonial magicians that weren't either of those. Plus, there's 27 different regions in Italy. Now, mind you, until 1861, that's when Italy unified as a country. So to say Italian, it would be more regional and in different folk magic and whatnot, just like with their dialects. So I'm just getting
Still,
specific.
hate mail can go to you directly on that one.
Yep.
I'm not involved in the comments.
I'll take it.
I'll
take it.
All right, there we go.
I know of what I
There you
speak.
go.
So we're speaking about the Exalted Dead, particularly in relation to a certain time period of a very interesting time period in Italian history, or not Italian history, as we just heard, pre-Italian history.
You can still say Italian history, but yeah, I'm just being more.
And so, I know you started on this. So when do you foresee this fine work coming to pass?
I almost want to be facetious and say when they're satisfied with it, but at the same time, that would mean it would never come out. Giving my ancestors and whatnot. I would say within the next year or so, I would like it to come out. But I don't have an exact date, so it's I can't say it's in its infancy. It's always been kind of, it's just a matter of cleaning it up and getting cohesive.
So Kaliva is totally open for divinations and actually uses some of the tools developed from those Italian sets of that time period, like such as the Visconti deck and similar decks.
Yeah, I'm not even going to.
And she's available. She's available for readings, and we'll have her contact information when this after it goes live. That she could, if you'd like to book a reading session, she kind of communicates to some of these spirits or uses those materials particularly. And of course, Queen City Curio has our own collective psychics and tarot readers on staff. If you're in the Toronto area, you need occult materials. You need talismans made. You need conjure supplies. You need voodoo supplies. You need a reading to figure out what's going on in Toronto. Here we are, 607 Gerrard Street East. Come visit us. We're open every night and on weekends for Queen City Curio.
Yeah, I mean,
besides the fact if you need to get your body fixed up too, we have an acupuncture clinic during the day. So
it basically comes down to it's a one-stop shop. You need stuff done, we're here for just about everything. So with that upcoming workshops, we have a not throat chakra, third eye on July 7th workshop coming up. And
so if you are a sponsor, so we should say if you're a sponsor of Queen City and Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole, we're currently going through all the chakra workshops, and we'll have a third eye workshop for all the sponsors. There's over 50 workshops you can peruse if you're a sponsor to see different metaphysical topics we've covered. Not only that, we have a library of over 500 books that you can actually take out and check out if you're a sponsor. But if you aren't a sponsor, you could just come here and peruse them as it's public. We're a mask shop because we have oncology patients for acupuncture. So
that we do.
You do need to wear a mask. But outside of that, you can come here and just look if you're a sponsor and actually peruse all those books. Or take them out if you're a sponsor. If you're not a sponsor, you can still come and peruse them. We're still working on some of the safety issues because of COVID. with actually running Sunday. You just come and watch us make stuff, and that's going to be coming to pass soon. Just a couple more safety issues, hiccups that we have to get past, but soon. And the Sangha associated that works with the center, which is a Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist working group, more or less. Yeah, they're going to start their rituals up soon. Gold Tree Mountain Sangha. There is also some magicians, a group of magicians who are looking to maybe become associated with the center and use our ritual space. And we'll get more details there. They tend to do more Goisha and more stuff like that. But we're getting there. We're talking with them. We're working it out. We'll see what happens. But if you want to run, go ahead, Kaliva.
Go ahead.
That was our spiel for our center, but
well, maybe a little more spiel for your center. I don't know. It's just that Mona is mentioning parsley and rosemary, and
we definitely have those.
We definitely do.
A lot of people don't realize that one of the herbs for the dead is actually parsley.
Yes.
And that goes back to ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and even over into Central Europe. You have rosemary for remembrance. That's what everybody knows. But also parsley. It was part of the funeral procession and whatnot. It was part of the rituals. So if you need it, get it. It's something that's even easy. You can get it at a dollar store, so there's no excuse.
Or not at the dollar store, or you could come here and get high grade dried quality.
If you want quality, go to Queen City Curios. I'm just saying, for those that aren't in Toronto or able to get on the internet consistently, but no, there's no excuse. You can even get it at a dollar store. So
channeling on air. This is what it looks like. Also, one last thing I want to tell everyone is our wish shrine is being built. We are going to have
it looks nice.
We have a public Shinto wish shrine that will be publicly available for any wishes. You don't even have to come and spend any money.
That's why I was seeing that. Okay.
Any money. Anybody. You don't have to spend any money with us. You just come in and you can put your wish on the wish shrine, and we are going to enchant it. It's enchanted that particularly Alambasu will be one of the spirits blessing it. But that's not the only one. There's several Japanese spirits and fox spirits that we have tied to it, and it's being built right now. It's looking fantastic. If you're in the Toronto area, we are buying lights to basically make it look with lights, have a certain lit type of thing. We're even buying artificial, not artificial, they're actual real fans. Not that matters. Because you just plug them in, but to create artificial wind to carry your wishes. We have a protocol of how the fire ceremonies will take the wishes and further release them to the spiritual world. So as this kind of...
Are you doing a bonfire?
If you're into...
Yes, we are.
We may or may not do a bonfire. That's going to come up in a different way.
That's going to be a different way.
Japanese paradigm uses slightly different fires, as it were. Okay. The Shinto uses slightly different fire.
Yes.
But similar principle to give it to the spirits. But essentially, we will be basically having a public wish shrine that is actually being constructed correctly, along with Shinto things, and it is publicly available. You do not have to come into our store to buy anything. You could just come outside the store and put your wish and walk away, and we're totally okay with. Well, if you're here, you're right outside the door. You just come in and at least say hi, but you don't have to purchase anything to have access to the wish shrine. If you just come during the day or near night when the door's not locked, even if the door's locked and you call us, we'll let you in for the wish shrine.
Well, we've already had people put offerings there for the Tunaki spirits and things like that.
Yeah, some Tanaki spirits out there too. They've got collected some offerings.
They've collected
Why
some
you would
offerings.
give Trickster Tanaki spirits some offerings? I have some questions about that, but okay, each to their own. But people have left offerings by the wish where the wish shrine is going to be. It's almost constructed. It's getting done. There's probably going to be another month or so or 2 months where we have to finish it. There's a lot of magic going into it to make it a real wish shrine for the Toronto area that you could come up and in the case that we ever get on the first floor with our store in the future, like that will be a wish shrine that people can actually access, and we'll take care of it as if it's a shrine. And that's what I mean. So it's not a fake wish shrine. It's a real wish shrine. Everything about it's real, and it's going to be publicly accessible. So if you're in the Toronto area and really you just want to come to the wish shrine and see it, and after we get it done, or even see how it gets built up, come out. You'll be kind of surprised. We're not just authors and public figures and have a YouTube channel. We're really working on this wish shrine to actually make it, to give people actually produce wishes. I mean, just for anyone who wants to put a wish shrine in there, or anyone who wants to put a wish in there. So it is more and more done. It's been a few months in the making of us working through it, and we're now at the level of it's being worked on.
And
the designs are done. Yep, the designs are done. It's starting. It's being built. I'm starting to spec out the LED lighting to highlight different aspects of it. I mean, so it'll be really pretty. So if you're in Toronto, again, you don't necessarily have to come by. There's lots of things to kind of just peruse right outside our center on the 4th floor. So again, 607 Gerrard Street East. And if you're in Toronto and you don't usually live here, but you want to reserve the space for ritual, we have space that you can reserve for ritual that we can make accommodations and make an arrangement with. And unlike if you do a hotel or private space, we know what you're doing, and we're not going to get in the way, and we have the supplies for whatever you're doing. So, again, if not always in Toronto, but you have friends here and you do magic and you want to rent a space for ritual, we know how expensive actual real estate is in Toronto. Feel free, contact us. We'll be happy to make an arrangement with you and kind of let you reserve the space that already it's magically imbued pretty heavily. So it should add to your workings. It doesn't get in the way of dark or light work. So anything, we don't care really.
Do the magic.
If it's that right, just do the magic. If it's that bad, we can clean it afterwards. Right, whatever. If it's that good, whatever you want to do, we're okay with. Unlike a lot of stores.
Yeah. And then Andrieh and I will be, at least toward the end of the summer, early fall, we're going to be participating in multiple pagan prides. So we'll be doing workshops.
Right. Queen City Curio will be vending at Hamilton Pagan Pride, which I don't know. Hammertown. We'll be at Hamilton Pagan Pride. We will be vending there. And for those of you who know, the fans that I have in Hammertown, which is a lot of fans in Hammertown, will be teaching the Fire Magic Workshop. I will be. Zach, he's working on what he's going to teach, but we're going to also do a deeper down at Queen City panel between different authors at the Hammertown. And we'll be there the whole day, available to do divinations on site and have many of our custom products that we're going to be making over the next few months. There, if you want to get some Florida water or hot foot powder or peaceful home or all the stuff we're going to be making, Van, a whole bunch of other stuff that we'll be making. So we might not risk our candle stock because, well, who knows what temperature it'll be.
Yeah.
But we will probably bring our custom items and kind of end there. So Hammertown, if you want to see us in person, it's going to be outside. We feel a little bit more comfortable. That's okay, despite what COVID does. So we're going to do it. And we'll also be at Toronto Pagan Pride.
2 cities for y'all in the local Ontario region.
If you want to take, if it's a week to take a vacation up to Toronto on Hammertown, hey, we'll make it worth your while if you come on one of the pagan prides.
Yep.
All right. And with that, this is Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole podcast, Queen City Curio videocast. Stay healthy, stay well, stay happy, do the best you can, and we will see you next week with who's up?
Lilith Dorsey.
Who we had on the show before. So she's going to come on the show and talk about voodoo and Santeria.
Cool.
So very good. Stay on Kaliva for a second.
Okay.